As you move into higher frequency, the world around you shifts to that frequency. As you move into higher dimension, the world around you starts to shift to that new reality of your perspective. So that also creates changes retrocausally. The entire universe is mental, that what you perceive in the reality around you is not material. It's a compelling belief that you have that actually forms the world around you. Your expectation becomes your reality, just like the double slit phenomenon. This is why double slit phenomenon does what it does. You have a unique light signature that is you, but you're not really that color. You think that you're the color that you are, but actually that's just reflection color. You have a whole nother spectrum of you that's the absorption. So let's take an example of hydrogen. This is what the spectral reflection of hydrogen looks like. So if you looked at, spectral analysis of hydrogen, it would have a color purple, another color that's more violet, and then kind of this bluish color, and then this light blue, and then this red pinkish color. That combination of colors is how we know hydrogen exists. So when we look into outer space and we use a telescope that does this spectroscopy, and we could see across the entire cosmos, we know where hydrogen pockets are, where there's a high preponderance of hydrogen based on the color reflections that come out. That's how we know what something is. We know that copper, like if you're looking at some material, you don't know what the material is, you can look at a spectral reflection analysis and be able to tell exactly what that material is just based on the colors that are reflected, the unique combination of colors that are reflected. Now, you understand that you have DNA. Your DNA is a unique signature of you. There's never been another DNA like yours, and there never will be another DNA identical to yours. Even though you're 99% the same as a monkey, that 1% that makes you different makes you infinitely different. Inside that differentiation is what makes you. So that means that you have a persona, right, which would be these colors right here, your reflection, and then you have a shadow, which that shadow would be the exact opposite. So all the colors that are used for the reflection are not part of the absorption. That's why you have blacked out lines here. So that means you have all the rest of the colors in the light spectrum that are not you. Well, you perceive they're not you. Well, what if those colors simply get projected back to you as reflection in the world around you? The mathematics of this is something called the Rydberg formula. And Niels Bohr, who was a famous Danish physicist in the 1930s and 40s, who worked closely with Einstein, he was more on the quantum physics side of things. He basically found that you could exactly predict, based on the frequency of hydrogen, its spectral emission of color. And it was exactly accurate. And this is called the Bohr atom model. And the mathematics of it is simply x and 1 over x. So they used here lambda. So it's lambda and 1 over lambda. So you have this differentiation that would then tell you these specific nanometers of light would be converted directly from the spectral or frequency rather of hydrogen, which then I can derive to know exactly and predict exactly based on the frequency of hydrogen, based on its 1 over x calculation, what its nanometers of light signature will be. It's exactly these lines right here. So this is measured in nanometers. This is 400 nanometers, 500 nanometers, 600 nanometers. What we're really looking at is 1 octave of light. We have 89 octaves or 88 octaves of experience across sound. Thought at the very basis becomes sound, becomes microwave, it becomes infrared, becomes ultrasound. And then as it goes higher and higher, light is just the 55th octave above sound. So you just keep taking up to higher and higher octaves of frequency, and now you're in the terahertz frequencies. So what happens is you just go all the way up until the 55th octave. The 55th octave from the very beginning is light, and that's the only octave of visible spectrum. Beyond that are all the other octaves. Then you get into cosmic rays, gamma rays, etc., right? It goes X-rays, all that. So what happens is this visible light spectrum is the same as looking at a piano keyboard, and it's just the note G on the piano keyboard, middle G, because that's the 55th note on a piano keyboard, which is a Fibonacci number. So basically, you look at the piano keyboard, you've got the entire spectrum as a microcosm, right? Which then we can expand and just put lots and lots of 88 piano keyboards next to each other, and the 55th one is the one that yields light. and the other ones are not yielding light, but they're yielding different forms of sound that we have different senses to be able to sense. And the ones we can't sense, we can sense through the pineal gland. A lot of people think that darkness is the absence of light. Darkness is not the absence of light. Darkness is the opposite condition of light. The opposite condition would be you've got a field of little nodal points that are cubes. Each of these cubes has a little LED inside of it. Think of it like an LED. And there's an on excitation and an off excitation. So the opposite condition of light is the off excitation. The condition of light is the on excitation. It's a field, just like a gigantic LED screen in 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions or multi-dimensions. Very, very high knowledge technology. What's happened is the pixels that you thought were you are not actually you. They're just reflecting the light signature of you. And as you move to another place, it's just like the wave transitioning. You move to another position, then a whole new set of pixels have been on excited to represent your light signature, just as if you're in a screen on a TV. What's happening is that there's a whole new set of pixels that are reflecting you. The only limitations that exist, therefore, are the ones that you persistently believe in, including time. The world around you is just your spectral absorption being reflected back to you, and you're X, and the world around you is your 1 over X. That's why I call it the U inverse. This is where it goes to Hermeticism. The first principle of the 7 Hermetic principles is mentalism. Mentalism means the entire universe is mental. It's not material. You have to realize the entire universe is mental, that what you perceive in the reality around you is not material. It's a compelling belief that you have that actually forms the world around you. Your expectation becomes your reality, just like the double slit phenomenon. This is why double slit phenomenon does what it does, in one context, and it works retrocausally even. So that means that if a photon of light is either going to be a wave or a particle, and its dependence on whether it'll be a wave or a particle is going to be dependent on whether or not it will be observed. It will even know before it's observed if it's going to be observed. And retrocausally, it will know, even if you didn't observe it, that you might observe it later on. And so it will act as a particle, because there is no such thing as linear time as we construct it. That's just an illusion that we create for ourselves to experience this linearity of time. But actually, everything's happening now. I don't believe that there's a different universe for every decision point we made, that you can jump into different decision points. I'm not of that. What I do believe, though, is that what is explicable from the perspective of Mandela effect, which is when a group of people have a memory of something that didn't really happen, like millions of people. Like people remember Nelson Mandela's death in the 1980s. It never happened. I mean, he died in the 2000s something. He didn't die in the 80s, but people remember watching his funeral. They remember watching it for hours and mourning it and everything, like millions of people. Well, as you move into higher frequency, the world around you shifts to that frequency. As you move into higher dimension, the world around you starts to shift to that new reality of your perspective. So that also creates changes retrocausally, so that throughout time, you literally live in what people refer to as a different timeline. Things change. Things that you might remember from the past, now you look them up, like Luke, I am your father, which was the famous line, right? He didn't really say that. Go back and look. I remember growing up with Jiffy peanut butter. There's no Jiffy peanut butter. There's Jif. These very slightly different nuanced things that I remember so strongly, like Febreze, stuff you put with the drying, it's not spelled the way that we thought, or the Flintstones, right? It's all these things are retrocausally changed. As you move into higher dimension, your past, present, and future now reflects the new frequency that you're at, and things that were not part of that frequency, little aspects of it start to dissolve in the past and in the future. So it's not that I'm jumping through different timelines per se, because in one lifetime, I decided to be with one woman. In another circumstance, I decided in the same lifetime to be with a different one. And so I could jump into a different lifetime if it didn't work out for me one way or another. No, I don't believe that. What I believe is that as we raise consciousness, the reality around us through all dimensions of time also changes. It's a mind blower. No matter how you look at it, I can go through the detail, right, of, okay, here's what you do. But I think throughout time, when people come to this understanding, they don't explain in the end all the scientific methods that they derived it and how their perception shifted. What they say is the result of it, which is, yes, they'll always say that we're in an illusion. And that I kind of had an inkling of quite some time ago. And then finally it really locked into place. And now science is actually parroting exactly that. But what they do say is that it's all about the transcendence of judgment, the transcendence of duality. This notion of looking at the world as being either good or evil. It's realizing also that the things that we judge negatively are the things that we attract in our lives over and over again. We literally become a hammer that's seeking a nail of our own self-validation of being a light worker, right? The thing that's going to fight the bad thing. When all along, maybe you're the designer of your own game experience. All of it for the benefit of your own conscious expansion. And to realize and remember who we are, and also to realize that the reason we're here is not to learn more judgments, but rather we're here to learn how to love. We're here to learn how to love and how to receive love, because that's really what happens. When we look at ourselves, the things we don't like about ourselves start projecting over and over and over again in the world around us, because those aspects of the higher self, of us, of the self, the full self, when you are in your complete authentic nature, combining both the part of you that you want the world to see in one light, like I had my LinkedIn on one aspect, and then I had my Instagram on another. When you finally combine and become the authentic you, and you fall in love with your experience, that's when you become enlightened. Because then you fall in love with everything around you as well. It's a love fest. Even when bad things happen to you, you realize, well, wait a minute. Throughout time, what I thought was a bad thing that happened to me actually turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. So time has this aspect of polarity. And it's just like music, if you know musical interval. So I could play a note, C, and then go to E, and that's one of the most beautiful chords in music. It's called a major third. But it's inverse, and most people, when they hear a major third, which is just da, da, and often you'll hear it with a perfect fifth, da, 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 right? And you play all three together on a piano, sounds great, fabulous. Whoa, it's like love, it's awesome. But if you play them backwards, if you go in a descending arc on that, so I just played an ascending by going da, da, da. If I do a descending arc of that and inverse the order of it, so it becomes, instead of C to E, it goes from E to C, and it's going down, that becomes a minor sixth. A minor sixth is negative. People, when they listen to that, they're like, oh, that sounds like heartbreak. So isn't that interesting? That chords of music, one direction through time, because the only difference in music could be like a time tracker, is that I play the order different. But the same two notes that I play in the descending order through time, and it turns from joy and love to sadness and heartbreak. What does that say to us? What it says is that the experience we have of love houses and embeds the seed of heartbreak. The experience of sadness has within it the seed of love and joy. And that's true across all chords of music. And what I'm going to tell you about the pyramids is that there are chords in music, right? The major third that I just told you is 5/4 relationship. It's 1.25, 5 divided by 4. It's simple. So if you take the Hertz frequency of a C note, multiply by 1.25, you're going to get an E note in Pythagorean tuning. It's perfect. Now, if we take the inverse of these and we start looking at all of these different relationships, a perfect fifth would be da, da, da. So that's the first and the third note. So it's da, da, da. That's a perfect fifth. Perfect fifth means stability. It's stability. You feel secure, stable, safe. That is a relationship of 3/2. And then the sound that we have when Darth Vader enters the room is what I already did. Dun, 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 dun. That is a diminished fifth, which is like the most terrible sound of music because it always makes you feel like a villain just entered. It's a reframe on everything in your life, because now everything that happens to you isn't happening to you. You chose it. So stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, why did I choose it? And if you're an athlete, you're not going to go into a sport where you're not going to be challenged. You're going to go into a sport that's going to tear the muscle. You're going to go into an area where you're going to be challenged because that's the most fun. When you finish that game or that sport, you're like, whoa, that was tough, but I did it. So we cannot assume how everyone would assume to come into this world and what they would assume that they would want to experience. Now, Helen Keller is a good example of this. She was deaf and blind and a paraplegic, and yet she came up with profound quotes that impacted the world over, tens of millions of people, by saying the only thing worse than blindness is to have sight without vision. And I was thinking, what would it be like if I couldn't hear? What would be worse than not being able to hear? And I was thinking about Beethoven, who sawed the legs off his piano so he could write through vibrations the Ninth Symphony, which is one of my favorite symphonies. And I thought, well, the only thing really worse than deafness is probably to be able to hear without empathy. I think that's what the world is missing. So what I've tried to do is share my story and my experience. And to me, it's been a beautiful journey. And it has helped me to reconcile all the things that have been in my life I thought were irreconcilable. But sharing it has been powerful because I know I'm just sharing it with the world around me. And it has increased also my empathy towards other people's condition and what they are experiencing. Because I don't believe I'm here to judge. I believe I'm here to learn to love and learn how to receive love. And that's what's important.
Ah, peraí. Eu tava esquecendo. Não esqueça que a gente tem um grupo no Telegram muito legal, onde a gente discute ciclo circadiano, estilo de vida, performance e saúde. Pede o link que eu te envio e faz parte do nosso grupo. Será um prazer ter você lá. Eu garanto que você vai adorar fazer parte dessa turma e do que a gente discute lá. E aí, curtiu o vídeo? Conta pra mim aqui nos comentários o que você achou. Não esquece, é valiosa a sua participação e comentário. E não esquece de entrar no nosso grupo. Vai ser importante ter você lá.